I was on $927 a month in disability. My mom was selling the house. I was a single mom. I had nowhere to go, but my kid needed me to figure it out. So I signed a lease that involved ponies and met the love of my life at a juice bar. In that order. Let's go. My mom was selling the house. I had nowhere to go. Her new place did not have room for us. I had $927 a month in Social Security disability. And I had a little girl who needed me to figure it out and absolutely no idea what I was doing. This is the episode where things turn, not because everything was suddenly fine, but because I decided to show up anyway one more time. Coming back to the land of living was not easy. I was so scared. Remember, I told you I did not bounce back from this one. I was still wearing black. And I decided I needed to talk to people again, do something a little social. And what could I do that wouldn't scare me? And so I signed up for an improv class, as you do when you're going through the worst time ever. And it was in this small town, it was the suburbs. It wasn't in San Francisco. It was suburbs, like 45 minutes out. No one cared about it. And this was not like some flashy class. This was at the community center down this long road at night, winding road. Who would even drive there? I wouldn't drive there. No one's going there. And there was only going to be like 7 or 8 people in the class. So I thought I could handle this. I was still wearing black at the time. I can show up. No one will know me at all, because that was my big fear. The shame of what I just told you in the last episode with the ECT. That was my big fear, is that I would show up somewhere, someone would know me. They'd be like, "Where the hell have you been?" And that I wouldn't remember some things. I was so worried about that. I mean, my memory was only affected right around the time that was happening, but still I was mortified because I have an excellent memory. So this was terrible. Or what if I saw someone I was supposed to know and I didn't know their name? I don't know, just all these things. So I decided it was like a Wednesday or Thursday night, drive down the long road. I'll be fine. I'm all in black. I'll be invisible. We'll go do this improv class. And I can say I got out. And that was going to be my proof to myself. Because if I could get out, then I could enter the land of the living again. And so I walked into that class. And this woman, again, there was only 6 or 7 people there. This woman turned around, shouted my name. I'm not famous. I'm not. But I had done business in that area. And she shouted my name and points to her bag that has my face plastered on it. Are you serious? She had been to one of the events I had done at this point 2.5 years earlier. And we had given bags out, my business partner and I had our name on it and our face. And oh my God, I was mortified. So she had been in the room. But I guess it's a gift, right? It doesn't feel like it at the time. But literally, my worst nightmare happened within 5 seconds of stepping out of the car and walking in the door. So I did the class. I wasn't good. I was so stiff. I was so awkward. I was so freaked out. I mean, I felt like someone who had been locked up for 20 years and just put back into society because I'd so thoroughly dropped out of society. But I said it was my proof. I went and did it. And I was going to start a small clinic. And I was so scared. I was so scared. I help practitioners all the time now, and they say they're scared. I'm like, I know. I was so scared. I was so scared no one would trust me. No one would want to see me. I felt so much shame because of what I had been through. But I also, along with all those feelings, I also felt determined that I have to share with people what I've learned, because what I went through was such bullshit and I didn't want anyone else to go through it. So while I wasn't sharing that story at that point, I was teaching them about their body and their health and what they could have, the control they could have in their hands, so they didn't have to suffer how I had suffered. So I started to start a clinic. The goal was $1,000 a month. If I had made $1,000 a month, that would be life-changing. And so I started this tiny clinic, and I remember signing rent, and I only signed a lease for 6 months because I was so scared. And I signed a lease, and it was $700 a month, and I was terrified. The disability check was $927 a month. I was barely making it. And any money I had saved before, because I'm a good saver and I don't live in debt, but it had dwindled and dwindled. That's how, because 927 doesn't cover everything. Even though we were living at home and, I had to pay for all the food and school stuff and kids stuff, it just didn't cover everything. It never does. And so any money I'd saved was dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. And I started that practice so scared. And if I just made $1,000 the first month, covered the rent, it would be a sign that there could be a future for us. And I made about 3,000 that first month. Thank God, right? I made a little less the second month, but I kept going. And then third month it went up, right? Like that just got started. And that first year I made 250,000 all cash that first year. No investors, no loans, just me doing the work and trying to help people one at a time. But my mom was selling the house and we had to get out. And I was scared. I panicked, actually. I could have stayed longer, but this was the trauma response. She said she was selling, and it was like I was so scared of ending up homeless with my daughter. It had never happened, but I had taken care of her all this time by myself. And the partner story, that's for another episode. And so I moved out. So now the practice is just going. I had to do so much work to get my license active and take functional medicine courses and, just figure things out, right? Help people one person at a time do things differently. Look at the root cause, actually look at them as a human being and their whole body and their whole health, and just make sure they didn't get missed the way I had gotten missed. Because there were such simple solutions for what I went through. Never should have gone through the absolute abuse and hell that I did in the medical system. So Nikita and I moved in to what was a converted garage on a miniature pony rescue ranch. And horse people, if you're a horse person, bless you. But if you're not a horse person, they are very interesting. And that person was interesting. So it was around $1,300 a month. Again, and we did some chores to get it down to like $11.50 a month. And then the woman left for 2 weeks. And my kid, who's an indoor cat, doesn't even like to be outside, is left like feeding 20 miniature horses who all get special food depending on their condition, special hay or green stuff or whatever the heck that stuff was. Clearly, we're not farm people. And then 3 big horses and a couple goats and a couple cats and 5 dogs and 3 parrots. I mean, what was I thinking? And this converted garage, it wasn't done very well. It was about 400, maybe 450 square feet. I joked with Nikita, just preparing you for college life, because she and I are in there. We're in bunk beds together. I'm in my 40s. Talk about a humbling experience. That's it. It's just one room. It's like tiny living, but it wasn't intentional and it wasn't quaint and cute. It wasn't a trend with its own, Netflix show. And we're living there. And oh man, it was bonkers. And I'm doing the best. I'm doing the best to mom Nikita, and just everything, groceries and laundry, and she's helping too, and the cooking and running the clinic. And I was so scared. I'd gotten down to, we just had a few thousands left. That was it. And there was nothing else left, and there was no backup. And I used that money to pay to another doctor so I could have their office space that was bigger, because I was growing, and but it was a leap of faith, and I wanted that bigger office space, and it was near this new place I was renting, and I did it all at the same time, and that was it. There was no more money left hidden under the bed, and there was no credit cards, and there was no backup. And that was it. I was all in. And thank goodness the clinic started to grow. And I started it in the fall of 2016. I remember making the website the summer of 2016, and it was scary, not knowing what was coming. And then something happened, something different. One of the bravest things I ever did, because I had been a single mom for 15 years and I was fine with that at that point. So Nick's 15 now, by that summer. And she would go away for just 1 week and go visit her dad. Other than that, we were always together. And during that week, one of my office staff, who's also a dear friend, had pressured me, like, go out on a date, go on a date. I had no interest in dating. No, thank you, forget it. And I also just assumed I was damaged goods, right? Because of the experiences I had had. I couldn't be with anyone. But I was in a really good place in my life. You know, my business was growing. We had a place to live. Where I was in rebuilding. I was healthy. I was in shape. I was looking pretty darn cute. You know, I still had no desire to actually be with anyone, but it was like it was a point where if things were good, things were well. So when she was out of town, I was like, all right, fine. I was still in scrubs. I came directly from the clinic. I was not invested in this. I went on a I'll tell the full story some other day, but I went on a online dating thing because my friend told me to, and I was on it for like a week, 2 weeks most. And all these people would message you. It was so weird. Um, and this is how naive and dumb I was. Some guy, his profile name was Open Space. And I thought we were right near Open Space Ridge. I thought he liked to hike. I didn't know it was polyamory. I didn't even know about that. That's how naive I was to those types of things. But anyway, the only person I said I would go on a date with was David. And he came straight, not straight from work. It was the one day he had off, but he had ridden his bike. So he was recovering from a divorce. And it was like, he was checking it off a box too, right? We were both not invested in this. And we went to press Juicery. And magical things happened that night. We absolutely fell for each other and kissed and made out like teenagers in the parking lot. Are you kidding me? I don't do that. Um, and that was one of the bravest things I ever did was risk falling in love again. Because after Terry, after Bob, who you haven't even heard the stories about him yet, after my brother, uh, after the college dude, you know, I had seen examples of men where they did not shine their finest. And it was definitely one of the scariest things. We've been together almost 9 years now. He's amazing. He loves me unconditionally, which has been incredibly healing. He also has severe ADHD and does dumb stuff constantly. It's really hard. And marriage is both the wonderful and the worst at the same time. It took about 7 years before I said, yeah, I'll marry you again. The first 7, I was like, why does anyone do this? Why does anyone want to do this? But yeah, after raising Nikita alone for 15 years, I remember, you know, once I made sure he wasn't a serial killer, I remember when we were at a restaurant and she started talking about something Doctor Who, and he started talking to her about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can relax. I don't even have to listen right now. Someone else is carrying the conversation. And I just hadn't had that ever. I left when she was a baby. I'll tell you that story at some point. But yeah, I escaped that nightmare situation when she was a baby, and I'd been raising her by myself the whole time. And so, anyway, they've built an awesome relationship, and she's turned out phenomenal. So, and David, he was doing his own work, but he was very supportive of me. He worked 6 days a week, really long hours. It was not fun. But I was building my clinic, and at my 1 year anniversary, you know, had hit multiple six figures and continued to expand. You know, I went from 4 walls to 22 walls, from a solo practitioner to multiple practitioners, then multidisciplinary. clinic, won awards, best of in the area, all those kinds of things. It was really great and starting to rebuild. And then COVID hit California, and we had been, moving because David met me when I was in that little 400 square foot thing. So we were both in humble circumstances. And that place, by the way, Nikita and I only lasted there 6 months. We were supposed to stay a year, but we left because it had mice, and I can't deal with mice. David Crowell on the couch coming towards me in our romance phase, right? Like we're wooing each other, and he had good reflexes, though, I gotta say. He caught that mouse, but I was like, I'm out of there. And I remember because I'm standing on the bed. And I'm like, I'm leaving. And he's just, I think he recognized this was a stressed woman. And he's like, okay. He's slow to do things, though. Like he said, if that situation had happened to him, it would have been 3 months or more. But I stood on the bed and I was like, I'm out of here. I am out of here. I'm moving. He's like, okay, I believe you. And in less than a week, I had everything secured, how to leave, new place to get, blah, blah, blah. David was like, I'll come with you. Hadn't even been together that long. And we had like a 2-story townhouse in not a great part of town. And we thought we were living it up. This was like we were on the rise. But at the point that COVID came, we had, a little bit more upward mobility, and we were renting a very nice house in a very nice area. Now, the only reason we got it, every time it was like a stretch and it was scary. The only reason we got it is it looked like crap. It absolutely looked like crap. The houses, it was way beyond my budget, so I was freaked out about that. And but the houses in the area, there was only like 3 or 4 to rent, and they were double or triple the price because this was just old and dated. So we completely remodeled the whole thing with the landlord's blessing. Um, and so, but it was very near my office. That's why we were there. And then all of a sudden, COVID lockdowns happen. And I have to say, California was the first to lock down. Everyone thought it was nuts. The only person who locked down before California that I know of is, yep, me. It was about a week before California did, 10 days at most, probably closer to a week. But I was paying attention to what was going on in the world. And even my mom said, are you sure you want to do that right now? Because I loved my in-person clinic and so much work had been put into it. We'd really grown, doing a great job, making good money. Again, things looked great. But this comes and no one was predicting it. But yeah, about a week before California closed down, I was like, yeah, things are going to get weird for a while. And I had a lease for 2 more years. And like the same guy would lease to all the medical offices in the area. And so I had a really good relationship with him. I always paid in advance. Because I was scared. I didn't know what was going to come. So I would take care of the obligations, right? I would do that in advance. So it was just a discipline that I built. And I was just always scared. When you hear more about Bob, you'll understand why. But I was just scared. I had to take care of my daughter. I didn't want to ever lose my daughter. And so anyway, I talked to the landlord and let him know I was shutting down and why. And we ended everything amicably. I fixed it all up. And so it was ready to rent to someone else. And I was able to get out of I still had 2 years left. I'd rented for years. And I was able to get out of 2 more years. So that saved like $60,000. And guess what? No one was allowed to do a couple of weeks later. Once the state shut down, all my friends and colleagues who had buildings in the same spot or nearby, same landlord, nope, no one else was getting out of it. And I knew someone, different landlord, but same town. She had built out a clinic and wrapped an expensive remodel into a 5-year lease. And then all the practitioners peeled off. She was stuck in that scenario and had to do bankruptcy. So it was a hard time. I know it was hard for everyone in all different ways, but as a business owner, that was a hard time. And my clinic at the time had been running really well. I only needed to show up like 2.5 days. Everything ran like clockwork, and I was doing all these other projects. And then when that happened and we went virtual, I had staff that were all of a sudden virtual and they weren't used to it. And they were each having their own individual ways of handling it, some good and some not. Patients were freaking out. And then I'm locked in a house with my husband because he had quit his job at some point and left it and was helping in the clinic, which was great and also not great. um, so very, very supportive. But admin, that's not his forte. So having him hang out and do work at the house with me when we're like on lockdown 12 or 15 hours a day and him doing admin, I was like, no, no, no. You go back to that job. Um, throw on some masks, get out there. It was like it didn't even care that it just didn't pay crap. It was like having free summer camp. And he loved it and he thrived there. So it was good. And I love my husband and I didn't want to kill him because we were locked up in a house together, right? Um, so anyway, I'll have to tell you more about that later, but it was a wild time. I can tell you I kept all the staff. We were still profitable. I took care of all the patients, still grew. But it was hard. And I don't know if I'd make some of the decisions the same way, but I did the best I could at the time. But it took a lot out of me personally. And all those projects that I had going, because everything ran like clockwork and I had so much time, all of a sudden I didn't have all that time anymore. And I was having to wear like 7 hats and I still had to fulfill on all those projects. It was bonkers. And then that's when I went through menopause, because of course that would be the best time ever. So whatever. That was so not fair. And all the things that I teach about how to go through menopause well and had been teaching, none of those boxes were crossed anymore when I went through it. 6 months earlier would have been fine, but and it hit me. I remember lying on the couch and David and Nick looking at me from across going, "We can see steam. Like you're changing the environment above you like a plane on a hot tarmac." So yeah, that was not fun. And then that's when I made the decision to move to Playa del Carmen at age 49 and turn 50 in a foreign country, with David joining me a couple of months later. So it was just me and Emmy, the dog, for that first couple months. It was a leap of faith. Um, that was not on my dance card. I didn't know that was coming. And then I released the clinic after having it for so many years and doing thousands of patient visits. Um, and I cried. I'm not a crier, but I cried. It was hard. It was hard to say goodbye to everyone, but I needed it. I needed a break. I just needed to shrug my shoulders for a minute. And I was in Playa. And then David joined me, and I was living like I was on a cruise. I found pina coladas. I don't drink. I would get the virgin ones, but you drink enough pineapple and pure coconut cream, that doesn't help with your weight loss efforts. I gained like 70 pounds in menopause and COVID. That was awful. And so when I moved, I was at my worst. I wasn't at my best. I was at my worst. And I'd gotten so sick again. I'd worked so hard to get well. And when I moved, I had 1 to 4 infections every single day, diagnosed, medical treatment for 7 months. It happened when I was in California. I moved when that was going on, and it took many months in Playa before I could get a break. And my first break was 3 weeks, and it seemed like a miracle. And I was back on IVIG. Oh, it was just such a hot mess. It was such a hot mess. And then that's when I said, well, I have to do something. I have to do something, you know, and we have to make money. And I was running Functional Medicine Academy just slightly on the side, the mentorship 1.0. And I remember February 2023, it was like $7,000 in income. And I was like, I think I'm going to make something and go bigger. And then I hit 700,000 a month by August that same year. It was 150x in 7 months. No investors. So I started this clinic because I wanted to make $1,000 a month and take care of my daughter. And that would have been enough. And I didn't have a huge plan. And I wanted to help patients. I wanted to help patients not go through what I went through. I wanted them to never get to that point. I wanted them to learn what I should have learned and should have known before. But even with my exposure, no one had told me. And the thing is that the medical system had missed me for years and then mistreated me for years. And I didn't want to put them down because there's times they do things that are life-saving, and I had figured that I had experienced that also. But good God, getting lost in that system, what a hell. Then I wanted to do for them what no one had done for me. So that's what I'm doing now, just a much bigger scale, much bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. And I'm going to tell you really exactly what led me there. So episode 8, it's called What Actually Made Me Sick. And it's the episode where I tell you what 7 specialists in all these years couldn't figure out and how I had to figure it out myself. So come back and I'll tell you more. Want to know what actually got me sick? What really happened? 7 specialists, 8 prescriptions, almost $1 million a year in medical care? Episode 8 will answer that. I will tell you what no one else could figure out, but I had to figure it out. And I don't want that to be your story.